Now I've got a story that exposes just how weak our borders are, as if you didn't know. A manhunt is underway for a group of suspected terrorists who vanished after crossing the Channel in a small boat. Security services have been monitoring 6 migrants with suspected links to Islamist groups, but 3 of them have completely disappeared. And this brings the number of suspected terrorists who reached the UK by small boat this year to 25, which is 6 more than last year's 19. Joining me in the studio is Telegraph columnist Madeline Grant and TalkTV's international editor Isabel Oakeshott. Very good evening to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, this is a story that it doesn't surprise anybody, really, does it? I mean, we've had hundreds and hundreds of people coming over in single days at a time, thousands, tens of thousands of people coming last year, more tens of thousands coming this year. I mean, I'm surprised it's as low as 25 terrorists that we think have come across. I mean, it could be thousands, couldn't it?
Oh, God. I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about.
No.
I despair. I utterly despair. I wonder what it will take for this government finally to wake up and actually protect us,
yes,
as is utterly necessary, given the severity of what you've just been talking about. I mean, let us not forget that the Manchester Arena bomber was a migrant who came over here from Libya.
Yeah.
We have to be exceptionally careful about who we let in and how we keep track of them after.
Right.
And it seems like no one is doing that due diligence right now.
Well, it seems incredible, doesn't it, Isabel, that here we are with a bunch of people that come into wherever it is, Dover, on Border Force boats or RNI boats. I thought under that system, they were kind of tagged, if you like. They were interviewed, even if it was only for a few moments. They were either given phones or had phones taken off them, and then they were sent off to some hotel. It obviously doesn't happen every single time.
Well, it doesn't surprise me at all, I'm afraid. I mean, given the sheer numbers that are coming in, of course, not all of them are picked up by Border Force, although the majority of them are now. But there's certainly still some who arrive undetected and disappear into basically into the dark economy. Right. And once they're in those hotels, they also disappear. They're at liberty to do what they want. Now, bear in mind that some of these people, a good significant proportion of them, deliberately throw away any documents they have identifying who they are to make it as difficult as possible and string out the process for as long as possible on the part of our security agencies and the Border Force and all those involved in assessing their claim. So I'm not really surprised. I am actually quite surprised that it's as many as 25. I mean, that is simply appalling and blows apart the argument on the part of the liberal lefties who continually insist that almost all of these people are fleeing war and terror and persecution and so on, and our hearts should go out to them. I mean, the reality is, I strongly suspect, and the evidence points to the fact that the majority of them are economic opportunists. Now, within that, of course, there are some deserving cases, but there are many economic opportunists. That's partly why so many young men are in those boats. If they're fleeing war and terror, where are their wives? Where are their sisters? Where are their girlfriends? Where are their mothers? So it doesn't surprise me that amongst them are some bad uns, but the idea that some 25 are terror suspects should be all anyone needs to know to stop this altogether.
Right. And it comes, of course, after we know about these other people who have been here for a while. 19 foreign nationals, Madeline, apparently linked with terror groups. They've all reached this country by small boat. They came last year. Most of them, we're told, have lodged asylum claims and therefore cannot be deported because of human rights laws. I mean, it's a joke, isn't it? I
mean, it's utterly ridiculous. Our hands are tied by our own system. And indeed, for people to point out the ridiculousness of a situation where we're so hamstrung by our own kind of human rights legislation and the framework that currently exists, that we can't even deport people who are manifestly a national security threat. I remember reading earlier this year that I think there were 19 that were specifically linked to Islamic State.
Yes.
I mean, I wonder how bad it has to get. What else needs to happen before we're actually able to use some teeth?
But even if something does happen, Isabel, hopefully it doesn't, but even if it does, we still get all the lefty excuses that, well, you know, you have criminals here as well, and, you know, there are people who are not very nice that were born in Britain and all of that. It's all fine, but, you know, it doesn't mean we have to import any more. And when I look at the marches and the rallies that have been going on for the last 5 or 6 weeks, and you know that some of those rallies have been organised by at least one guy who's got a connection to Hamas, who lives in a council house up in Colindale, who came here under an assumed name and is now pretty much living here as a citizen.
I mean, it's neither here nor there that we have homegrown criminals. As you say, it's completely ridiculous to suggest that that's an argument for importing some more.
Right.
And I'm not sure it's fair to say or true to say that the government can't, that we're hamstrung by our own system, that government cannot deport these individuals or turn down their asylum claims. They can do so immediately. What it requires is robust leadership. And that has not been shown. There will undoubtedly be legislation under which you can deport people who are known to be linked to terror. It's just a question of the government not actually having the guts to use it.
That is the problem, isn't it? But again, can we not get anything done? You know, you sit here today, we've got Rishi Sunak making his little speech about let's have some lower taxes, but we can't really do it now, even though I've done a brilliant job bringing inflation down. We know that we've got people coming here that are probably not very nice and that may be dangerous, but we can't really do anything about it. We'll just sort of kick it into the long grass. I mean, for years, they completely ignored the illegal migrants on the boats and just went, oh, it's all right, don't worry about it, it's a very small number. But they can't anymore, can they?
No, they can't. I mean, there was quite a long time where everyone, mainstream politics and also the mainstream media, was ignoring this problem. And, you know, for a long time, it was only basically Nigel Farage and, you know, occasional clips on a channel like GB News where they were actually...
Or TalkTV. We did start before then.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong about that.
We did start before.
Well, there you go, TalkTV.
But yeah, no, we did. I mean, we've been going on for a long time. And now all you hear about, you put the Today programme on, which I don't do very often, but occasionally when I do, they're talking about small boat problems. And you go, blimey, you didn't do that 4 years ago.
Well, I mean, it turns out that the public cares very, very much about the prospect of having completely porous borders, an inability to control who comes in and out of this country, and a political class that basically puts up its hands and says, there's nothing I can do about this. It's too complicated and too difficult. And meanwhile, of course, we're the ones that have to pay for, at vast expense, the accommodation of all these migrants. And as Isabel pointed out, it's often, you know, very difficult to process people because they destroy all of their documentation. And, you know, once they're into the system, there's a very complex sort of legal apparatus that swoops in to drag out their case
pay for that as well.
As long as possible. And it's utterly
And as long as they need a lawyer, we'll pay for that. And as long as they've got another appeal, we'll pay for that.
Yeah.
You know, people make an absolute fortune. And from what you know, Isabel, about the security services, you know, it's obviously a tough job they've got. We find out that they've got hundreds and hundreds of people under suspicion at any given time. But, I mean, if these characters have disappeared, we're told that they're probably cyber terrorists more than they are planning, you know, a spectacular event, if you like. But what are the chances of finding them?
Well, I don't know. I must say I was quite surprised when they found that runaway prisoner who allegedly absconded from the London jail. That was rather encouraging. I thought that once that person had been on the loose for several days, there was no chance of tracking them down. So perhaps we should give our security services the benefit of the doubt. But the reality is that they are coping with an unknown scale of threat from all these people coming over. I mean, I wonder whether there's an argument that if you come over on a boat and you can't demonstrate or provide any compelling evidence as to where you started your journey or your country of origin, then your claim should be dismissed absolutely on that basis. I mean, you must have started your journey somewhere. You must know where you were born, and it must be possible to furnish some evidence of your origin. So perhaps that should be a disqualification in and of itself.